going on, everybody? Hope you're having an amazing day. We want to welcome you to another conversation that we're having and really kind of starting something new. We're in the month of January. We're all in the month of January. At Christian Faith Center, we are in the month of January. And one thing that we do is 21 days of prayer and fasting. And we were kind of thinking about this and having conversations with people. And we realized this. Not a lot of Christians know how to fast or where to start or even why we do what we do. And so we want to have a conversation today and really over the next few weeks to talk a little bit more about fasting. And so I'm joined today with our Boise campus pastor, Nathan Schreiner. What's going on,
Hey.
Pastor Nathan?
I'm excited to be here. I'm excited it's 2021, and I agree. I think this is something that we hope to just talk through some things that, we can go a little deeper, have a little time to have some conversations and just relax a little bit. And so I'm really excited about this, excited to be here.
Yeah, I think this is going to be something we'll do more often. I think we need a name for it, like Nathan and Dan's Life and Leisure. I don't know what leisure sounds like. It should be in there somewhere.
We have coffee or just leisure.
We have coffee, fancy cups. But today we have a special guest
Yeah.
on our first ever episode, Brandon Jenkins. I almost called you Pastor Brandon. Do you want to go with that? But yeah, let's give it up for Pastor Brandon. Jeez, but
It's prophetic.
I'm used to saying that.
I know, right?
But he owns Born Again Fitness. You're a trainer there. I believe you trained Pastor Monty for a while.
Correct.
I don't know if you want to claim that or not. It's not like
Maybe I
a
shouldn't
walking
say
billboard or anything.
Right.
But joining us, we're going to talk about fasting, and we thought we needed somebody to talk a little bit about the physical side of it and going along with fitness. So I thought it'd be kind of a cool perspective, and we don't really talk about that side nearly as much as the spiritual side, at least at church. So that'd be cool. But we're going to do this month or these next few weeks. We're going to talk about fasting food this week, and then we're going to talk about fasting technology next week and talk a little bit more about that. And then following week, we just want to kind of talk about rhythms and kind of building a routine with that. But Pastor Nathan, you want to maybe talk a little bit more about these next few weeks and what we're going to kind of dive into?
Yeah. Well, I think really this was born out of, for me at least, having Brandon come on to talk about, the physical aspects or the physical benefits of fasting as well. I think for a lot of people, and maybe I just speak for myself, even, being, a Christian for a long time, that you know that spiritually it's a discipline or a practice that God has really commanded us to do in the scripture. It actually says when we fast, not if we fast. The Bible says when you fast. It's something that really that we are commanded to do, and as being a follower of Jesus. And for me, it really intrigues me to think about. Obviously, we know that God has obviously created us with a spiritual, a soul, a spiritual side to us, but obviously he created our bodies as well too. He from the beginning, Adam and Eve, he formed them out of the dust and he breathed life into us. And so he created us as a physical body as well too. And for me, I love to think about, not only the spiritual benefits of us fasting, but I really start to kind of to wonder what the physical benefits of that are as well too, to really dive into, the science behind how the functions of our body come together and work, and the science behind physically, are there any benefits to what we already know and we can really study spiritually are some benefits to fasting as well too. And so that's really what we want to dive into today as well with Brandon. Next week, just to kind of give a little teaser of what's to come, we're going to talk about the mental and emotional benefits of fasting, technology, entertainment, social media, these kinds of things. And really, we live in a world where a lot is coming at us at all times. We can, access any bit of news or information or entertainment at our fingertips 24/7. And I think there are some mental and emotional tolls that can take on our bodies. So that's going to be in the following week. I think that's January 14th. We're releasing that episode. And then the last one, we're going to have Pastor Jordan join us. And we're going to talk about just now that 21 days of prayer and fasting is coming to an end, what should we take from this time? What are some weekly or monthly rhythms that we can put into place in our lives that really will be something that could be a part of our everyday lives? And so that's what the next 3 weeks really looks like, as we have some conversations about fasting. But really today, we'd love to hear from you, maybe a little bit about yourself. You can share about your stage in life that you're in right now, your business, and your accolades or your titles or anything like that. And then we'd love to hear just some physical benefits or scientific benefits to the physical aspect of fasting. And so, Brandon, talk to us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Just as far as the business goes, so I am more of a obviously Christian, holistic lifestyle coach. So I focus on mind, body, spirit. So I have found over the 10 plus years that I have coached clients that if you neglect any of those three areas, the individual won't have the type of success or results that they're looking for. So I take into my background, not only the exercise component, nutrition, but also my background in psychology. So getting my master's in social work, so clinical social work. So I'm able to incorporate all of those things to help the individuals that come, into my office, my studio. So work on the mindset, address the physical aspect, nutrition, all ties in. So mental health, physical health. I believe for us to be who God has called us to be, we have to be as healthy as we can be in all of those areas. So in terms of benefits of fasting, I think the biggest one for most people is weight loss. Everyone wants to lose weight, but, how do you do it consistently and keep it off? So weight loss. So let's also talk about reducing inflammation in the body, chronic inflammation. So by doing that, you're going to lower your markers for potential diseases such as cancer, heart disease, rheumatoid arthritis, and the like. It also can help to improve cognitive functioning. So comfort food is called that for a reason. We eat a lot of high carb, obviously high sugar, high fat foods, which produces within the body serotonin, right? Which kind of makes you feel relaxed and just wanting to take a nap. With fasting, so typically intermittent fasting. So if you have a 16-8 fasting window, so you're fasting for 16 hours, eating for 8, but typically most people will not break their fast in the morning. They won't eat until 11 or 12 in the afternoon. That can help to just keep you feeling more alert mentally because you're not eating those carbohydrates in the morning, which for most Americans, the standard breakfast is high in carbohydrates, right? So that's another benefit.
Could you maybe talk a little bit, you mentioned this earlier when we were talking before about kind of the inflammation that happens and kind of maybe just kind of break down when you decide to fast, like what goes on in the body that can be a benefit for a period of time, like an intermittent fast on a daily basis, but also for like a 3-day fast or 21-day fast, even kind of what goes on in the body during that period.
So with the fasting, what you're looking at is your body will be able to utilize the sugar in the system better. So it's going to help stabilize your blood sugar. So each time you eat a meal, you have a spike in the blood sugar and then it drops. Now, it depends on what types of foods you're eating. If you're eating a lot of highly processed foods, right, which a lot of people do. So if you eat a donut, you're going to have a massive spike and then it's going to drop. You'll feel satiated for maybe an hour or two, but then you're going to eat again. This is how a lot of people also continue to gain weight. They're eating foods that are void of healthy fats, protein, and fiber. So you're getting all these spikes in the blood sugar. That's one of the major benefits of fasting is you're stabilizing the blood sugar. So again, you're feeling alert, right? You're not having those massive spikes where you're constantly eating all the time, and your mood is more stable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know for me, I don't know if there's any science behind this at all, but for me, I find that when I fast for a couple of days, there's this time period. We were talking about this yesterday. There's a time period where you're raging like hungry, like you are starving.
Sure.
And then it seems to like subside a little bit, and it becomes a lot easier. And then I've also noticed that on the flip side of that, when I get done with fasting, I find that I can't eat nearly as big of a portion. and I'm full a lot quicker. Is there like reality behind those kinds of things that your stomach really shrinks, or is that just my understanding of that?
The stomach, well, yes and no. I can go to speak on how you can kind of make those hunger pains a little easier on you. So when I have clients try intermittent fasting, right, just because it's a tool like anything else, I'll have them either take a caffeine tab or just drink black coffee in the morning, which will blunt hunger. So it helps them to kind of further extend that fast. But I think you just become more mindful of what you're eating. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you're eating slower and you're not eating as much. So, yeah.
That's so good.
I think I tried intermittent fasting for a while. I was watching a interview, and it was with Terry Crews, and I don't know why, but I have this, I like Terry Crews for some reason, this big guy from the Old Spice commercials, but just wanted to be like him for a little bit, and obviously didn't work out very well. But maybe you could kind of just go a little bit into like, how do we, I'm thinking about routines, and in a new year, like kind of getting over that bump where maybe, as I just bumped the mic, maybe kind of talk a little bit about like how do you get through that stage where maybe people start something new and then give up. Maybe people have New Year's resolutions and then give up, or like we were talking about this. I think I kind of think this mentally, that for me it's like that after day 3 when I fast, it's like all of a sudden it gets a lot easier. I'm still hungry, but I like to begin to pick up momentum. But maybe you could talk to people that are like, maybe it's a spiritual thing, maybe it's fasting, maybe it's a physical thing even. Like what's something to kind of get over that hump where maybe they get the motivation to start something, but they can't really get to that place where they can build a routine through that.
Right. So and I actually did an amazing blog post on this. The biggest thing that gets in the way of people achieving any goal, it doesn't matter what it is, New Year's resolution, anything, but they try to make too many changes too soon. And so science backs this up. If you attempt to make 2 or more changes, you are more likely than not to fail. You're going to fail. I have clients focus on 1 change at a time, master it, move on to something else. So that might be drinking more water. It could be parking your car further from your job and walking, taking the stairs, something, anything. Because if you rely on motivation, you're not going to make it. It's like going to church on Sunday, you hear this amazing sermon, you're pumped, but by Tuesday, it's gone. You've got to rely on discipline, and it's action. So if I take action, that's going to bring about feeling, right? I can't wait and think myself into different behavior. I've got to act my way into different behavior. Yes. So focusing on one thing, master it, and then go to something else, but just being consistent and having realistic expectations. I'm not going to lose 20 pounds in a month, right? Or maybe even 2 months. It's just having those realistic expectations, focusing on one thing at a time, and just branching off from there.
Yeah. So maybe for both of you, like, where do you think is kind of a good place to start? Like, kind of getting those disciplines going. Like, if people have never fasted before, if they've never done this in their lives, like, how do we get started with that? Like, what's a good place to get going?
Yeah, I mean, I think spiritually, it really depends on what is going to allow you to focus on what you need to focus on. I don't know. We could talk even physically. I know that for me, sometimes in certain seasons, I feel like something is really like, has become in jeopardy of controlling me a little more than I'd like it to. Caffeine being one of those. And so sometimes when I feel like the balance is out of whack, like if I miss a cup of coffee in the morning and my whole day is ruined, then I don't like that. I want to make sure that coffee or caffeine doesn't control me, that I control it, and I think there's biblical, principles there too. And so, I think there's many different kinds of fasts, and maybe we could go into some of this, and then maybe you could focus on hours. You mentioned like a 16-8 or maybe days, or, some stuff if you want to think through. But really, when I think about fasting, obviously there's like the the pinnacle of fasting is just fasting from all food and only drinking liquids. And I think even some people do just water as a liquid. And then there's like, you can do juice or smoothies or, things like that. And so there's some variations there, but obviously there's the all food fast, and that's for 3 days to, however long you go, you fast all food except for either just water or liquids or whatever. And then I think it's very, common for people to do just one item. So, I'm going to fast sweets for, 21 days or a week, or, I'm not going to have any sort of dessert or sweets or pastries or, any sugar or whatever it is. I think there's like food groups that people do too. So I'm only going to, there's like the Whole30 is a pretty common thing that people would consider a fast. So I'm only going to eat like whole foods, fruits, vegetables, meats that are not processed, or, or there's variation. Maybe I'm going to go vegetarian for a week, or, whatever it is. I think there's food groups. And then I can think of like times of a day. So, that's the intermittent fasting we talked about, where, I'm going to fast from sun up to sundown, or I'm going to fast breakfast for the next 2 weeks, or I'm going to, these time periods. And so, I think one of those are great options. And maybe it's just, I think it depends on, where you are at. If you feel like, fasting one of those ways is going to help you to, bring more discipline to your life so that you can replace that with, the things of God and growing deeper in your relationship with Him, then I think that's the best for you. And so maybe you could chat through, you mentioned the 16-8, maybe times of day or lengths, maybe 3 day, 7 day, 2 week, whatever that you feel like are good options for people.
Well, so in terms of duration, the most common is, 24 to 72 hours, right? The intermittent fasting, the 16-8, so fasting 16 hours, eating 8. That's a method that I use with not only myself, but my clients. And it really helps them to be able to adhere to their macros, in terms of if they want to lose weight.
So I don't do math in public, so unpack like what, so like if you ate lunch one day, what would that look like for a 16-8 rule?
Say that. So are you asking what time would I eat?
Yeah, like if you ate lunch one day, so if I ate lunch today on Tuesday, was when we're filming this, when would I eat again?
Oh, got you. So for myself personally, I break my fast typically at 11 or 12. And so once I break that fast, I have an 8-hour window to consume my calories that I need for my specific fitness goals. And then once I hit that number, I'm done, right? That 8 hours is up, I won't eat. Or if I hit my macros, I won't eat. But it's unique to that person. So maybe they'll go 10, start eating at 10 a.m., and then they have 8 hours to kind of consume their daily calories. So that's how that works.
Gotcha. So if I broke my fast today at 11 a.m., I eat a lunch, eat a dinner, some snacks in between, whatever, and then I don't eat all the way until Wednesday at 11 or 12.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Correct.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm not the math pro.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you mentioned 24 hours, 72 hours. Do you recommend going longer than 72 hours fasting with no food?
If someone was going to do that, I would encourage them to obviously consult their doctor. But it's totally unique to the person. Some people, you can get into a lot of it. It's unique to yourself. Some people feel they're more spiritual if they go longer than that. Okay.
Yeah.
It's your choice.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just like the idea of like being kind of going with what you feel compelled to do. Like maybe you just start with one day and just kind of go from there. That was kind of where I started the first time, and then kind of built up to like 3 days. And kind of my typical, I don't, the Bible says not to talk about it, but kind of, I'll just for practical reasons, like kind of my typical fast, I probably do once a year, is a 7-day period where I'm like just doing juice and just kind of having that. And kind of the reason for that is that's what I just have felt compelled to do. Like I said earlier, it's like that day 3, there's something that happens. And I actually think spiritually something happens when you get over that phase where you're like most desperate to eat food. There's something, you just kind of change mentally, and And maybe there's some shift that happens in the body at that point in time. I'm not really sure, but I think about the passage in Matthew 5 where it says, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness," where there's literally a shift of like, I'm focusing on getting this food in my body, but now I've like denied that enough that now I'm desperate for what God has for me. And there's a shift inside of me. But I just love that idea of like, I'm just going to say no in this season, but be compelled. Like I've never done a 21-day fast, and not because it's not amazing. I've just never felt compelled to kind of do that.
Right.
What are some, I mean, do you have like any stories that come to mind of people that really made fasting, a part of their rhythms in life that, you that come to mind, that something really broke through physically, maybe mentally, spiritually? What is it that you typically see that happens with people if they can kind of get this to be a part of their life in your experience?
The fasting.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people that I work with are emotional eaters. And so for fasting, for me, I used to weigh nearly 300 pounds. So it radically changed my life. It showed me that I can be disciplined. It just changed the way I thought about food, my relationship with food, my relationship with God. And for other people that utilize this, everything about their life changes. It's amazing. Food no longer becomes their idol, right? And they're allowing God now to work through their life to kind of heal those areas that took them to the place to where they used food to avoid and escape life and, the things that we go through in life.
Yeah. And I love that. I mean, I see that to be so true in my personal life, but I think that, again, I just love that God is so gracious and faithful and, so much farther beyond what we can imagine, where he set these things up spiritually and physically to operate in a certain way. I just think that we are such creatures of habit, in our society, these first world problems of this 21st century America that we live in. And, I think of even Amazon going in, where we can, in some cases, there are Amazon deliveries that can be at our doorstep in like less than a day sometimes. I mean, it's wild to think, that we are becoming so, habituated to really having anything we want or need at our fingertips almost instantly. And I think what it does is, like you said, it creates this reliance on things to be able to, fill this void in our life. We live in this habit culture, and I think that really it's the convenience of life that we live today that really we never go without. We never go without. I mean, I was talking to, our Boise campus a couple of weeks ago around Christmas, and, it's a shame because my wife at Christmas, she doesn't know what to buy me, because if I want anything throughout the year, I just get it for myself, And it's like we just have become so accustomed to not going without. And really, that at the very core of what fasting is to go without so that you can replace that with something greater. Fasting is going without so that you can have something greater. I love that. I'm going to butcher it, but discipline is sacrificing what you want now for what you want more. And that's fasting. And I love that both spiritually and physically, fasting sort of forces our soul, our spirit, our mind, our bodies, even physically, into going without. It like forces our bodies into submission. And I like to think that fasting really spiritually, I think it breaks that cycle of habit in our lives. And both physically and spiritually, it breaks that cycle of being in this habitual convenience mode or going without. And I like to say that really the heart practice always follows the physical practice. And I've just found that whatever we do physically, our heart tends to follow that. And I think when we can understand that in fasting, the idea is we go without something in our lives so that we can replace that with drawing near to God in a disciplined way, in a way that we put some practice behind that. We put some some practicality behind it. And I think, for me, the fact that even Jesus, when he lived here on earth, he fasted for 40 days. I mean, to think about divinity, the Son of God, he lived a perfect, sinless life living here on the earth. And even him, Son of God, wanted to be closer to God the Father, so much so, the very Son of God, that he fasted to draw close to God. And, I think just to encourage the folks watching that really that's our goal. Our example is Jesus, spiritually and physically. Now we know that we can go without in order to replace that with something greater. And that something greater is God. It's the deeper things of God. And, I'd love to maybe spend just a few minutes talking about, even just maybe what all of us have learned through seasons of fasting, how, maybe we've heard the voice of God at a greater level, or we've seen the miraculous and things have taken place, or our eyes were open to, the new direction that God has. But I've found personally in my life that every time I fast, that's what happens, that God just reveals himself to me at a greater level. And so I'd love to hear what you guys' experience is. But
I think for me, I think kind of two things happen. One thing is I think we're kind of practicing the no muscle. Like when we say no, I remember this line from Rocky 3. Great source to cite right now. But in Rocky 3, Apollo Creed says this line to Rocky as he's swimming. He's like, I want you to build muscles in places you didn't know you had muscles. And I just remember thinking about that scene. And there's muscles, spiritual muscles that I think we can develop during fasting that we didn't know we had. There's something going on that's deeper. We're learning to say no to food, but I think we're also learning to say no to other things, to immorality. We're saying no to people that shouldn't be there. We're saying no to things that don't belong. As we fast, we're developing something inside of us that we didn't know was there. But you mentioned this. I think something happens in fasting. It's kind of like this, and Paul, the Apostle Paul, kind of talks a little bit about this when he talks about a marathon running and training. I kind of think fasting is like the deep training. It's like the really hard, difficult thing where I know this. I get hangry when I fast. My wife is not the hugest fan of when I'm fasting because I get a little bit testy during that season. But there's something that kind of goes on. It's that tough, kind of challenging thing. And I found that if I can kind of make it through, usually the first few days I'm just kind of grumpy. It just something shifts as I say no, and it's almost like you got to detox from all the comfort food that you've said yes to, and something happens over that. For me, it's that 3-day period. I don't know why I keep thinking about that, but something happens, and I've known this. Some of my most greatest memories in being a Christian came, or the moments where God spoke to me, or maybe someone had a word for me in that moment in time. It came during fasting. There's just something that happens where you say no to these other things enough, and you begin to say yes to God. And I really do believe you begin to hunger and thirst more for what God has for you. But maybe you could kind of speak to, is there a moment in time, when maybe it's during a fast or whenever, where God kind of spoke to you, where it was just maybe a little bit more clear because you moved away some of the distractions in your life?
So, yeah, this is really personal for me. So when I was my mother's caregiver when she was fighting cancer, and she ultimately, lost her life to that. And so I was just on a journey, my own spiritual journey. So I fasted because I wanted to know what did God want me to continue to do with my life? Was I on the right path? I was just going through a lot of different emotions, and I did for myself. It was a 2-week fast. It was just, all I did was juice, so just veggies and whatnot. But during that time period, because one of my biggest passions is working with people, but with youth, right? And I coach girls soccer. And during that time, I just had various individuals come up and present me with opportunities to continue to work with the youth in different ways. And so I felt as if I didn't hear God audibly telling me, but he was bringing people into my life to say, hey, you're on the right path. I need you to stay where you're at. It's not time for you to move yet. And so I took that as my mother's passing wasn't this amazing thing, but something positive came from it, and I was able to kind of deepen my walk with the Lord, and just know that He had me on the right path that He wants me to be on. And so I'm still there today. So that's what
amazing.
I got from it.
I think it's interesting. You and your wife just had a baby, and you said something that I think was really good. That really, when we sort of break that cycle of habit in our lives, I tell people when they have a baby, it's something I wish someone would have told my wife and I before we had our first baby, was to learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And, it's just like I see it over and over and over again through life, that it's like as a couple gets married, or, they go through life and they're single and then they get married, or whatever, there's this moment where all of a sudden, your habits and your comfortability that you've built, in your own life, just for reasons that you can't control, seemingly. I mean, you have a child or you get married, or you can control that, but for seasons that, that cross your path, all of a sudden you're very uncomfortable on a regular basis, and you have to quickly learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that's similar with fasting. I think even spiritually, that we get pretty comfortable in our, I think that, you live in China and it's illegal to be a Christian. It's probably a lot, more, it's not as easy to get comfortable being a follower of Jesus in that kind of scenario or environment. But in America, we have everything at our fingertips, and we can become comfortable with our walks with God. And I love in seasons like that how, something kind of rattles our comfortability or rattles our habits. And then when we really dive into the things of God, He always reveals Himself. And really, I think that's the beauty of fasting, is that we force ourselves to be uncomfortable, and then we find comfort with God in those uncomfortable seasons. We find comfort, we find shelter, we find refuge with God. And in those uncomfortable seasons, when we sort of push away from having everything at our fingertips and we go without, then all of a sudden we realize that maybe our priorities were a little wrong, even, or that we weren't trusting in God as much as we were trusting in the system, or the America, or whatever it is. And I think that's, at the end of the day, that's what's so beautiful about the physical aspects of fasting, but also the spiritual, is that we can say, we're going to force ourselves into this uncomfortable situation so that we find comfort in Him. And, I think that I've said for a lot of years that I think that God always uses, I've always said that, to me, worship, the best definition of worship is an outward expression of an inward conviction. And I think that lines up scriptural, that God, through the Old Testament, He required these sacrifices, these altars to be built. And I think that, like that line I said, that many times our physical body, or our hearts, will follow our physical body. And for me, like when I'm worshiping and I'm not feeling like lifting my hands, and I lift my hands, man, I feel the presence of God, and my heart is strengthened, and I'm encouraged, and I sense the presence of God. I think the same thing with fasting. Man, I don't feel like God is speaking, or I don't feel like I'm hearing the direction of God, in my life. So you force your physical body into what your inward conviction is, and then, man, all of a sudden God breaks through into that situation. And so I just love so much how the physical and spiritual really work hand in hand. That really the heart practice always follows the physical practice. And it's just so much power there. But maybe we could close in talking about just some takeaways. Maybe just like a list of, man, if you're here and you're listening, and you are a long time practicer of fasting, maybe some things that you could try. Maybe this is your first time. Maybe we could just kind of summarize everything up and talk about some takeaways.
Yeah. Well, I kind of think about this where I like to go into a fast with like a theme or a reason for why I'm doing this. And I actually I wrote this down. I don't have this on memory, but there's kind of like 7 different things in the Bible where we see reasons for fasting. There's the seeking fast, which is just kind of the purest form. God, I just want to know you more. I just want to understand you more. I want to be in relationship with you. Or the favor fast, where you see this in the book of Esther, where she goes before King Xerxes, and she's fasting before so that she has favor, leaning into God before that season. Or discernment. Maybe you have a big decision that you have to make, and so there's just kind of, whenever I make a big decision, I want to take some time to fast and slow down and really think, is this what God has for me? And there's just a clarity that happens in that season. Maybe you're in a slump, and so just kind of slowing down, change of pace, change of place, change of perspective. And so just kind of changing things, a breakthrough fast. Maybe you're believing for breakthrough in your family or an addiction or whatever. Fasting is a way to do that, I believe. Gratitude fast. And so just kind of thanking God. I've done this. I've actually made this a practice every day where I just write down 5 things I'm thankful for, because what happens is when I begin to think about what I'm thankful for, I think less about what I'm disappointed about or what's not going well. And also just a dream fast, just to get away, to lean into God. What does God want to do in and through my life? But I just kind of I share all that because maybe you're thinking about this, and I think it's just important just to kind of lean into, like, what do I want God to do in this 3 days or in this 21 days or whatever? What am I hoping God's going to speak to me through this season? But yeah, maybe Brandon, if you have some kind of takeaways or something that you were just thinking about.
Just the biggest thing for me would be just, if someone's considering this or they're going to do it, just, whatever God lays on your heart, do it. Keep it simple. And just be open to receiving how God wants to reveal himself to you.
Yeah. So good. Awesome. So, maybe it's intermittent fasting and, a certain time frame of the day. Maybe it's a certain type of food, caffeine, sweets, whatever it is. But we really love to hear, even in the comments. I know this is kind of a new thing, but on YouTube, if you're watching, or on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or anywhere you're watching, there should be either reviews or comments. And we'd love to hear what you're going to kind of put in the stake in the ground. I think there's power in almost even going public to keep you accountable a little bit. Like, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I feel like God is speaking to me. Maybe it's intermittent. Maybe it's a food group. Maybe it's all food for a certain amount of days. Maybe it's a certain type of fast where you're doing just whole foods or just veggies or just fruits or just meat. That's my kind of fast.
Yeah.
The carnivore fast. I actually think that's a thing. Is that a thing? I've heard that's a thing. And I've heard it's somewhat healthy. False or true?
Depends on the, it all comes down to the type of meat you're eating, the cut, right? And how the fat percentage, but.
Like a bacon fast? Is that a thing?
That should be. Yeah.
Should be. Come on now.
That's a great idea.
That's awesome.
I actually forgot to mention the comments. We might mention you next week if you say something funny or
if you have a question
important too.
Yeah, if you have a question,
we might answer your questions. I'd promise it, but I won't. Anyway.
Yeah. So next week, we're going to wrap up for today, but next week we have another guest, actually a certified counselor that's going to be with us to talk about.
Because we need help.
Because we need help. We're going to have a counseling session right here in front of everybody. No. But he's going to be with us next week, someone that goes to CFC, a dear friend, and he's going to talk about really the mental, emotional benefits to help with even depression, anxiety, different things like that, of really fasting, technology, entertainment. There's so much science and things that are coming out about that, and so really excited to talk about that aspect of this next week. And so really encourage you, let us know what you're going to fast when it comes to food. And then we'll see you next Thursday. We'll release on January 14th, I believe it is. We'll release the entertainment technology fasting, and so we're praying really that God reveals Himself to you in this season. And thank you so much, Brandon, for being with us. And
I appreciate you guys having me on.
And we've loved getting to chat with you, and so we're so excited. But thank you guys so much. God bless you.
Awesome. See you guys.
Thank you.